They say the sky's the limit, but it's just the beginning.
So this is a bonus session, really, to talk through some of the primary reoccurring characters. We call them Tier 1 characters. And primarily, these are the ones with high word counts and appear in most episodes, but not all episodes. This series has a lot of characters. Most of them are incidental, but we have a fairly long list of 2 tiers of quite large numbers of characters. So this is about, I'd say, 14 characters, and these are the ones that, you have to really know, and they appear in most episodes. So let's just run through the characters then. So clearly the series being called Angel and May is primarily about 2 detectives called Alex, Lucy, Angel, and Sharrow May. So let's talk about Alex first. She's quite a feisty action girl who is a very old friend of Sharrow. They met at boarding school, and they're very different characters, but they sort of have something about them that hits it off with each other, and they make a good partnership. I mean, Alex does a lot of the sort of running, jumping, climbing, shooting, and all that sort of stuff. She's a bit like a female version of Bruce Willis. So she always goes where angels fear to tread, action, and then Sharrow ends up having to extract Alex from difficult situations. So she was born in 1966 when the story opens, and even though the main bulk of the story is set in 2075, you have to realize there's a 52-year gap in the middle where they're in the deep cryo sleep in the spacecraft. So that's why, of all of the characters, Alex and Sharrow are actually the oldest in the whole series, even though for most of it they're actually young 20-year-olds. Her parents get killed in a road traffic accident, and because of this she's shipped off by a rich uncle to Highcliffe boarding school for girls, and that's where she meets Sharrow. Now, she's very highly intelligent, actually, but she likes the physical stimulation, and she's really good at team sports. She plays field hockey, but she's sort of kind of slightly contrary, has arguments with other students and teachers. She's a bit of a tricky character, really. And she met Sharrow outside the principal's office after they both made explosions for different reasons, and they were about to get the cane, and they're waiting outside the headmistress's office, who's a bit of a tyrant. So she goes into the military, and so she works her way up through the military. I won't go into all the details because we'll probably do a more detailed program. At the time of the start of the play, which she's 57, okay, so she's at the end of her career, and I think that both of them, Sharrow and Alex, are slightly jaundiced because the agency is not going well. And so they're sort of tired and worn out and just buggered, basically. So we kind of, in this series, we explore the whole dynamic, the sort of body dysphoria of them suddenly waking up in a new world with a young body. She's a weapons specialist, but she's when the story opens, she's a bit past it. She's a bit too old to do sort of real military stuff. So she sort of likes to hark back. She was in the first Internecine War, age 42, which was right at the end of her career. Bit of a wild child. Very loyal, though, to those that she really likes. Alex is attracted to women, but she likes homemakers, really. She has a relationship when the story opens with a lady called Marie. So that's sort of Alex. So what is Sharrow like? Well, she's the sort of polar opposite, really. She's the intellectual person in the team. Her middle name is Ophelia, so her full name is Sharrow Ophelia May, but nobody actually knows that. And her parents were also killed in an accident. I think her father was in the CIA, and there's some incident which we don't really know what it is. So that's how she ended up at Highcliffe as well. She acts out because she's a high achieving student, but she's very bored with the rather sort of plodding pace at Highcliffe. And that's how they get to meet. She is interested in biology, and she goes to Stanford and studies biology. And she graduates, and she joins the FBI Forensic Laboratory Program. She is heterosexual. She marries co-worker Steve Reidman. And then kind of about a year or two before the main story opens, he gets killed in a road traffic accident. So she's still going through bereavement about that. She's done biological warfare, but she hasn't really been involved in any frontline action. The age when the story opens is she's 55, but when she's been relifed with these nanites that occurs, she's age 21. She's fair-haired, blue-green eyes. Yeah, so she likes to investigate and plan and organise. She's very feminine and has glasses. Tends to drift off daydreaming, really. Very sweet by nature, slightly socially awkward, a bit of a geek, really. She's quite good at business, but neither of them are geniuses, otherwise the agency would have been a lot larger. They tend to be a bit of a soft touch, so they don't go for the money jobs, they go for the hard luck stories. Not particularly good at guns and shooting, but she does it if she has to, but she doesn't really like it. And Alex feels like the older sister she never had. And she adores Alex. But she sort of butts up against her as well. And she has a teddy bear called Oscar. So that's Sharrow. So they're the two principal characters, and they appear in most episodes. There is a short story arc at the moment where they don't. And there's Major Boy Colton Williamson. He's an ex-military guy, but he's past the end of his career. He's been an officer cadet and second lieutenant and lieutenant, and he works his way through to the Space Corps, and eventually gets restationed to New London, and has various sort of military adventures. So he is the military support for Rudy. Now, I'll talk about Rudy in a minute, but he sort of is the sort of counterbalance to some of Rudy's more elaborate military plans, but it's the sort of heart and soul of the Royal and Cherry Blue Storms, which is the regiment that is based under the Retrograde Inn. So, yes, he appears in many of the stories, mainly the ones that have sort of military twist to them. Then we have Chinque Chen. He is a brilliant IT technician who started as a black hat hacker, but then had a breakdown and effectively was caught by the FBI, and then they turned him, and he was let off his sentence if he worked for them, and became a white hat hacker. And so he worked his way up in the FBI, but he couldn't handle the pressure, really, and he's a very gentle soul, sort of middle gendered. His kind of, he dresses quite feminine. He looks quite feminine, but he doesn't really want to be a woman. He's sort of gender fluid is the way to describe him, really. And he ends up via a convoluted story at New London, and ends up working for Rudy as the sort of IT person in the regiment, and does all sorts of odd sort of technical jobs, such as program drones and smart missiles and things like that. And his sidekick is another character called Zed, who is a younger person, less experienced. So Chen is Zed's boss in this series. That's about it. Yeah, gender fluid, really, makes it interesting. Doily. Now, Doily's a kind of feisty space tug pilot. A sort of, I don't know how to describe her, really. She's punk. She's sort of a bit punky in her youth. She's rebellious. She was an orphan in New London who has joined the Royal and Cherry Blues at an early age, and has been brought up being as part of that family. And she basically does piloting for another major character called Gander, and does sort of quasi-legal work. She pilots most of the ships on and off. Her favourite ship is Ghost and Latitude, which has an AI of the same name, and that's a tug, space tug. So she does tug work around New London and is moving goods. And she was the one that actually discovered the two bodies of Angel and May that were in the spacecraft drifting through space. So her family fell on hard times, and sort of Gander was a family friend of her father, but he died of pancreatic cancer. So she was brought in, looked after by Gander and Rudy, and is very, very loyal to them. So yes, but she sort of kind of rubs up against Alex particularly because they're very similar characters. She's an action girl, an expert bass pilot, and yeah, is a key character in the series. So moving on, we come to Gander. Now, Gander's probably one of the most interesting characters, certainly a key character in the series, in that she runs the inn and was a co-founder of the Royal and Cherry Blue Storms with Rudy, and is really a big shaker and mover, although it wouldn't appear that way when you first meet her. She's a scary person, but actually quite kind inside. She's the proprietor of the Retrograde Inn and co-founder of the Royal and Cherry Blues, owns a number of the local businesses in this area of this O'Neill habitat called the Ben Cubban. But she was born a boy. She's really like a transgendered person. She dresses as a woman permanently. She's a dragon, basically, a dragon lady, but has a very kind heart. What else about her character? Likes music and dance, but is actually getting on in years, so really can't do much of that. But she does support the gay community in the Ben Cubban and has a drag night on Thursday nights, which puts on a nice show with music and dance and stuff. And that's run by Maurice, who is a gay fashion designer who is also a good friend of Gander's. Yeah, so she's sort of basically a key character. She supports, she's a decision maker alongside Rudy. She's badass, basically. It's implied that she gets up to all sorts of things that we don't know about. I think mainly smuggling of luxury items, things like salmon and caviar and various other things you just can't get on a space station, but people are prepared to pay a lot of money for. She does a little bit of arms smuggling, but I think that's very small. She certainly wouldn't deal in human trafficking or anything that I think would be considered evil. So she's one of the team. So the next character is Ghost. Now, Ghost is this AI that, when the story opens, inhabits the ship and can travel between the ship and an avatar, which is purchased for her by Doily and with some help from Slim, actually, another character. Now, Doily, Ghost's best friend, and they play chess when they're in the spacecraft in the long, boring hours while they do tug work, because basically space travel is damn boring because you've got long travel distances just gliding and doing nothing, really. So they're chess buddies, and she always beats Doily, of course, being an AI, but occasionally she lets Doily win because she likes Doily. But her thing is she actually wants to kind of be more human, and she kind of wants a body so she can, I think, interact with her main friends, which are basically the humans around her. So they buy her this old second-hand body with one leg shorter than the other, so it's a bit of a dodgy old banger of a avatar, and it has a problem with its voice box, which makes the sound really weird. And over the years, I mean, she was incepted quite a while back. She was incepted in 2041, so she's been around because it's 2075 when the series starts. So she's been around a few years, and she's had time to develop a personality. Obviously, most AIs are sort of copied and from a template, but then they then diverge from that. So she's a great character. She's a lot of fun to write into things. She's not a superhuman type person. The avatar body is pretty knackered, so she sort of struggles to get around, limps a bit. She mainly works behind the bar in the Retrograde, and she's taken a liking to learning all the fancy cocktails, particularly the margarita range. So she has a lot of lady friends who really like her margaritas. So moving on to the next character, we have Jacinta Isabel Stoner. Now, she is a sergeant in the Royal and Cherry Blues, and she's like one of these mid-level soldiers that actually does a lot of the fighting and heads up small reconnoiter groups and gets involved in the action. Her nickname is Jen. She's 5'4" with short dark hair and a slight natural curl. She dyes her hair though, so it's sort of spiky. Good close sense. She's always looks pretty sharp, but mainly she walks around in military gear and armor. She's very gentle in nature. She likes she's got an aquarium in her apartment. She likes washing fish. It's sort of she finds it relaxing. But she's a good combat person. Yeah, but she has done glamour infiltration in the past, so she's got a bit of an interesting side bent there. She's a pilot as well, Class 3 off-world cruisers. Sort of, she's joined the Royal and Cherry Blues as a professional soldier, so but she's very much part of the team, but she's not one of the orphans that grew up with the whole thing. So she's been brought in as a professional soldier, really. So yeah, she does some of the basic training for new members, and actually ends up being quite good mates with Angel and May. So moving on, we get to Chris. Now, Chris is quite interesting because she's a character that is in both the first half and the last half. She's the only other character in the series that so far that has been around from to see Angel and May as old people and as young people. She starts off as their sort of kooky young secretary in their office, in their detective office in LA on Earth. And after the event in the season 1, she scarpers and goes into hiding. And over a period of time, there's various things that happen to her. She goes off to Paris and does painting, meets a husband. They then go back to the States. And by that time, the first moon colony has been formed. And they end up starting a small cleaning company for spacecraft and habitats on the moon, which, as you know, because of the dust situation, is something that's really important. So they gradually build a business up. They were nearly done in by one of the main evil protagonists in the series, so they have a deep hatred for that person. They build this thing up over the 52 years that Alex and Shara are sleeping into the second biggest space line in the solar system. So she becomes a woman of influence in the latter part of the series. Her full name is Christiana Evie Finch, or Chris Finch, and the company is called Hedron Finch. And so they actually do get to meet up in season 2 with Angel and May, and there's a sort of reunion, which is quite fun. Because of her newfound wealth and power, she becomes a useful ally to both Gander, Rudy, and the whole crowd at the retrograde, because they share a common enemy, a chap called Stank. So that, when people have common enemies, they can often get together. Plus the fact there's the relationship between Angel and May and Chris, who are very good friends. So let's move on. We've got Maurice, and as I mentioned earlier, his name is Maurice Finbar Bodway, and he controls the drag acts for Gander, and is sort of like the artistic director and the creative genius, really, for the clothes and the costumes. A bit over the top, very 1990s gay man. We sort of play it for a comedic element, not to make any political statements, really. But it's kind of adopting that style as a sort of post-gay kind of statement, if you like. Because we're 75 years in the future. I mean, nobody cares if you're gay or whatever. So it's just sort of, he likes that kind of historic thing. He likes old clothes of the 50s, and he studies the Paris fashion designers. So he's very sort of retrograde in his sort of liking for fashion. So he does these big blue blossomy dresses and stuff like that, which is kind of interesting. He ends up doing a few things with Slim, and you couldn't imagine two people more different, but they actually hit it off and actually make quite a good unlikely pairing. So that's quite fun. There's lots of comedic elements that can be played there. Okay, so now let's talk about Rudy. She's the leader of the Royal and Cherry Blues Regiment in conjunction with Gander, because whilst Gander sort of looks after the inn and the business side, they both co-own both organisations, and Rudy wouldn't go behind Gander's back. I mean, they fought together to get the inn and the whole situation. And the reason why Rudy set it up is she couldn't bear to see all the poverty and the street kids in the Ben Cubban. So she sort of made this thing that would give them purpose. I mean, the Royal and Cherry Blues is very much like an organisation that trains kids. It's not just really about going off in a mercenary regiment. It's more than that. So, yeah, she gets injured. She's in the Space Defence Force, and she gets injured in action, gets a medical discharge, but comes in with Gander and really doesn't do frontline military stuff, but she plans all the campaigns. You often find her down in the command and control area under the inn. She looks younger from a distance, but when you actually get close, you see that she's actually older than she looks. She likes black. She dresses in black jeans with sort of military shirts. Occasionally will wear an old flight jacket. She's very worldly wise, knows the tricks and turns of life, mannish in her mannerisms, really, likes to be in control, but is not a control freak. Is very good at reading people, can uh, do like a sight read of somebody and figure out what they're all about. She occasionally wears makeup, but generally, because she's involved in military stuff, is not going to go around dressed to the nines. Quite a mainstream character, because obviously she organises a lot of the things that happen. So now we get to Slim. Now Slim's a bit of a dark horse. He likes to play the cowboy personality. It's a sort of a sleeve, if you like. But he was originally in the CIS, and it's suspected that he was a sharpshooter or did the wet work for this rather dubious Earth-based agency. His gain, he's not a spring chicken, but he really loves the guys at the retrograde, and it's his home, really. So he'd do anything to protect them, and does quite a few military style dirty stuff. For Gander and Rudy, he'd probably get asked to see if he'd be interested in doing it. And you don't really know what he's been up to. He's very much into riding his horse, which is a real horse and is very, very expensive. We suspect that he's actually quite wealthy, but it's not sort of specified how he got the money. He has 2 specially modified pistols that shoot a laser instead of a bullet, but they look like normal guns. He acts as a weapons consultant to the Royal and Cherry Blues, but this is on the down low, so not many people know that. Yeah, he likes to prop up the small bar at the retrograde. He talks about Western movies, and he also plays a mean game of darts. So he's a bit of a pub guy, but he's not a heavy drinker. He sort of nurses it, and he's a good friend to Doily. They're pretty close. Oh, Sophie, yeah, Sophie. She's a lovely character. She's transgendered, actually, but you wouldn't really be aware of that. She's a student, very bright and very sort of positive about life, perky and a lot of fun. She does work at doing waitressing for breakfast shift as a waitress, just to get a bit of extra money for her college fees. She's thin but not waif-like. Yeah, she's sort of kind of slightly gangly with a slight boyish edge, but very feminine, really. Likes to sort of wear baggy trousers, a bit like the early Madonna look. She's a sweet dyke retro kind of look. She plays a second-hand and rather battered old saxophone. It needs a new mouthpiece, actually. She likes acid jazz, but also side reel music and she likes anything that sort of like has high information content. She sometimes sneaks in, and Gander and her listen to old records on Gander's expensive hi-fi. So they're a bit sort of like into old records and old music. She ends up working in the agency with Angel and May and becomes a really, really good friend to both of Alex and Sharrow, and goes on a number of campaigns. So she's sort of like a key character, really. The inn is her home, really. Her parents were killed in a space accident, and she was the son of a prominent geologist who used to do a lot of exploration work in the asteroid belt for mining companies. She's transitioned prior to the series starting, but this comes out in the wash. And then there's Zed. Now, Zed's an interesting character. He's the second best computer technician in the Royal and Cherry Blue, and he kind of is a sidekick to Chen, but again is very spiky and is quite young. So when the series opens, he's a typical sort of young teenager, really. He can't control his temper, says things that he later regrets. We get to know him when we find out that he's having a relationship with a street character called the Lonely Princess. Because of this, he actually gets kicked out of the regiment, and he got into Gander's treasure room, and actually, for the right reasons, he was helping this lonely princess. But he's one of these people that sort of kind of rubs you up the wrong way, even though his heart's in the right place. He's tall and gangly, has longish hair, slightly beady, sullen and brooding, but has an unexpected romantic streak. So he was born in New London to a single mum, and again, most of the people at the inn are orphans, or parents have had bad things happen to them, really. That's why they're there. There was a mining accident when he was 8 and his mother was killed. And after that, he ended up at the inn. And so ends up sort of, again, being the fourth member of Angel and May's new agency in the second part of the series. So that just about covers all of the primary characters. There's a load more secondary characters. I mean, it's quite complicated, and one of the problems with the series that we've created is we've realised retrospectively that maybe we shouldn't have allowed so much proliferation of characters and so much complexity in our little universe that we've created. But what the hell, it's too late now. But it does make for a rich world, and we really love these characters. I mean, we feel like they're real people. So if you find this interesting, just let us know on our Facebook site. We've got a group Facebook site you can join. Just look it up under Angel and May, and you can send messages, and we do listen to feedback. So that's all from me. My name's Melanie Blizzard. I'm the kind of producer and director of this series. Anyway, that's where we are. I hope you like this. So I'm signing off for now. Goodbye.